Hello and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Talking Peace with the Western New York Peace Center. I am your host, Ladaisha Williams, today. Before I get into our wonderful guest and the topic of conversation today, I would like to start off by doing our land acknowledgements. Our indigenous family always does a good job at acknowledging the land, our natural resources, and almost everything from the sun down to the grass, the animals, the water, things that we use and we see every day. We definitely want to give acknowledgement to that. And we also want to acknowledge that Buffalo is on sacred land, home of the Haudenosaunee and Seneca nations. And so I just want to do that first. All right. So we are listening in on WBNY 91.3, Buffalo State University's station. We're rocking with Brian Harrell. We have...
Hello. Thank you.
What's going on, Brian? So today's topic of conversation, we're going to get into it. It's going to be about diving deep into the history of housing and gentrification in the United States, mapping out what it takes to build real collective power right here in Western New York, all the way from BMHA properties to local renters and property owners. Now, let me go ahead and let you know we got two guests here with us. We've got our new Executive Director of the Western New York Peace Center, Stephanie Mejia. How you doing?
Good. How are you? Thanks so much for having me on today.
Doing great. Thanks for coming and joining us today. I know that you have some good feedback on the topic today, too. I can't wait to get into it. Mm-hmm. We also have our powerhouse, our organizer, a national organizer of 15 years, and founder of Buffalo's Tenant Federation Union, right?
Yes.
John Washington. What's going on, man?
Everything's going on, so I'm really glad to be here, glad to be able to talk about the issue, and just really cool to be connected with the Peace Center as well as a former board member.
Awesome. Same former board member. All right. So I do want to tell everybody a little bit about the Peace Center, because we don't just do the radio show here and the other show over at Richard Wicca's spot. Shout out to Richard Wicca over at Think Twice Radio. What we do at the Peace Center, which has been around since 1967, is we advocate and work against the three evils, which we call racism, poverty, and militarism. We have multiple task forces. If you are interested in becoming a member, we have the Environmental Justice Task Force, which is working on multiple things, but something that you guys may be familiar with is the restoration of the Humboldt Parkway. A lot of our Buffalo leaders have been working on that recently. We also have our Gender Justice Task Force, who plans the annual Women's March. Usually takes place in May, and they have put together a float for the Pride Parade as well. We've got our Latin American Solidarity Task Force working on that resistance to ICE. Thank goodness our city stood up against ICE. We don't want anybody just coming in on our streets and, taking our people down. These are our people who work hard in our community, and they deserve respect. We have Power to the People Task Force. We have Resistance Militarism Task Force. We also have our youth programming where we have Peace Prints, Western New York. So there's something for almost everybody of all ages if you want to get with the Peace Center and advocate and work towards these issues that may mean something to you as well. We are always looking for donations so that we can continue to advocate, and we are always looking for members. So definitely visit WNYPCenter.org to get more information on that. Jumping right into today's topic, which is the housing crisis in Buffalo. I want to go over to John, and I see you're doing a lot of good work here in the city, basically. The Tenant Union Federation. And you've been working on this stuff for 15 years. The Tenant Union Federation here is only about 2 years old, but you've been doing this.
Yeah, really only just really this year I've been working on it locally. But Buffalo is, the third poorest, fourth most segregated city in the country. It has the oldest housing stock. It has the highest concentration of lead in the blood of children, highest concentrations of industrial contaminants. And so, Buffalo is, I think, the worst place to be Black, particularly, and to live in the country. And so, the housing crisis is something that is, international. And, Buffalo actually gets it the worst and has consistently got it the worst. And so, for me, that's something that is something that's a national problem and a local problem. And I think that's one of the things that makes it really hard to solve.
No, absolutely. When I think about the value of the home, it kind of speaks for itself. Like, who doesn't need one? And without a home, and a home is most of the time more than just a brick and mortar or, a place to go into. But, we need that. We need that shelter, especially in a place like Buffalo, right? We get all 4 seasons.
It's your safe space.
Safe space. What do you guys think about, the value of the home and things like that? What comes to mind?
Well, at least, for me, I've been working with people who have been experiencing homelessness for over 10 years. And the biggest thing, other than it being, when I say safe space, it's a place not only where you lay your head down at night, but you have a spot to come back. You can get your mail there. You can have your support system there. You can eat safely there. You can sleep safely there, as opposed to couch surfing or being homeless in the street or shelter where you can't get a good night's rest because you're consistently worried about, am I going to get attacked? Am I going to get robbed? Do I have to move? Are the cops going to come get me? Are they going to destroy my, my shelter? So many things, is it going to rain? Is it going to snow? Like, your home, I think a lot of people forget how important it is to have a stable spot to come back to every night, and also that stable spot being safe to also live in. Because you can also have a home and it can be unsafe. It can have a bunch of infrastructure issues. It can be in a neighborhood where it's declining and stuff like that, and there's not the right amount of resources supporting the community building there. Having just a place to stay at night where you feel safe and you are able to call your own is so big, and I think a lot of people forget about that.
No, that's definitely true.
Yeah, I think, home is the number one need, and the truth is home is something that I think that has historically changed a lot. The individual and single-family home is something that really, was designed to segregate and separate people, and so, it's harder than it has ever been in human history for people to get homes, and our housing, market has been kind of turned into, a profit and also kind of an insurance policy against all the other risks that our country takes. And so I think home from a personal perspective is like the basis of meeting all your needs, because you can't really meet any of your other needs unless it's like your ability to envision a future. And so historically, fascists, people who want to control people have controlled homes and controlled property. And so I think, ultimately, since we've had private property and colonialism, there's been a threat to the home that really is, drives humans crazy as people. And so if you go to any, from psychology to, anti-homelessness work, everybody always talks about housing first. If you talk about counselors at schools, it's going to be, not what's going on in the classroom, what's going on in the home. And so I think, the fact that we don't even see home or value home as the most important thing in our lives is a testament to how much, society is structured to convince us that it's not the most important thing. And then in America, voting rights have always been tied to property rights. And it wasn't really until 1965 that even white people who didn't own property, that everybody got a chance to vote in this democracy, because it was originally for people who own property. And so property ownership and your relationship to property, what neighborhood you live in, what apartment building you live in, define how you're seen as a person. So if you live in the BMHA, if you live in the projects, if you live, on the east side of Buffalo, and that's also relative to who you're talking to and how well they know it. But for most folks, where you live is a major identity, and it says a lot about who you are and what you have to respond to the environment that you're in all the time. Even if people aren't making judgments about you as a person, if you live in Broadway Fillmore, you are in different conditions than if you live in North Buffalo, and everybody knows that the second that they see you, and almost there's always the game of where you from, and people kind of guessing where you're from.
Classism in there, right?
Oh, lots of classism. And that's the structure of things. So I think for me, home is so definitive of every part of our experience, and it's it's like it's complicated because it's a personal thing, it's an economic thing, and it's a political thing.
No, well said. In a world where, we're all starting to notice the major changes here, and in a city where we're noticing the changes here in Buffalo, and also in a world where it's easy sometimes to acknowledge the problems and what's wrong, we seldom come across people like yourself who can do something about it for a large group of people. And so I want to ask you, what inspired the national or local formation of the Tenant Union Federation?
I think really it has a lot of things. First, we have a landlord in chief. I think Donald Trump has done a great job of making himself out to be, a reality TV show personality, but Donald Trump is the godfather of modern real estate. He invented gentrification as we know it in the modern framework in the United States. He was the first person to build hotels in Qatar, Dubai, the Trump Taj Mahal in India. He's the first white guy to build stuff pretty much all over the planet. He's one of the largest and most richest influential real estate people of all time. Put him up there with the Caesars as far as his ability to control land and profit. And so I think we're in a moment where, essentially, we're going back towards slavery. And I think that, the control of where you live, the control of even the politics of towns, of cities, of communities, is really at stake. And I think that people kind of undermine or kind of downplay, what it means even to be in the city right now and have them raising taxes 25% and cutting off all the services that are most important to people. I think people really don't want to acknowledge how much control government and the capital that controls government has over our lives. And so I think we have to. I think we're at a stage where we're in a part of human history, a long arc of human history where, no one owns anything. And I think that we've seen this happen to every democracy that has ever existed, has gotten to a point where it's, the militarism and the control of every other country that it takes to produce all the plastic and all the stuff that we use and all the decadence that we live in is too much. Therefore, you have to tax land more, which then puts more pressure on, we're landless serfs. You can call it a middle class, but that's really, historically what we are as the average person. And so, we've seen this happen in Rome 5 times. We've seen this happen in every other country. There is a point where you cannot continue to oppress people and you cannot continue to import goods and services and be dependent on the rest of the world. And so, one, the rent is too high. The rent has always been too high because the rent has never been about affordability. It's been about control and profit. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's been, kind of a concerted effort since the 50s to convince people that they were in control of their economic lives and that, purchasing homes, was a long-term path to prosperity. And the reality is this housing market started off with $13 trillion of loans to all white people. And so, that housing market sits on, all of the land that was given to white people, during the creation of this country. And I think that's another thing that people really just, no country has ever gone from 13 colonies to 48 states that fast and gotten that much land, therefore that much money, and that much control of land and control of people and people's lives, ever. And so I think, America isn't really a country, it's a phenomenon. And it's part of the phenomenon of private property and privatizing property, which didn't happen other places because, people argued over who had property over time. And when you go to somewhere else and you take a whole country, away from indigenous people, you can privatize property in ways that have never happened before. And so I say all that to say that we are in a moment where I think, the illusion of the American dream is pretty much dead in most people's eyes. And if we don't do anything, the rent will continue to go up. Yeah. More and more people will be continuing to be homeless. Buffalo, we have a 54% child poverty rate. Literally, children die every day because of this housing system. And so, I think that Donald Trump became president because yeah, this is like kind of a final battle over how our housing system works and our capacity and ability to have access as regular people to ownership. He wants to bring in 50-year mortgages. He wants to take away Freddie and Fannie Mac and all of the infrastructure that allows even our housing system right now to be as bad as it is. And I don't think that people understand how the degree to which, in Trump's mind, we have been winning so much since 1965, it is disgusting to him. Right? Because we were never supposed to be this free. We were never supposed to be able to own our own homes. We were never supposed to have access to lending or even the things. So, like, I think that's what another hard part about America is, like, the average person is like, why is everything so bad? Like, why is this, like, not working? And for, like, the right and the people who have, you know, created this country and are very connected to the origins of this country, like, this nation was, like, you were never supposed to be able to vote if you didn't have, like, enormous amounts of property. And like, you were never supposed to be able to vote if you were a woman or black, or so every day looking at the freedom, looking at things like Pride and Juneteenth and all these expressions of freedom we have. And so, like, we have such a different country that it makes it really difficult to like really show people what's happening. And so for me, the Tenant Union Federation, the local tenant federation, that the job is to clarify like what is actually happening and what our role is in it, because I think we all have a role in our own oppression. We all give up things. We all pay our rent every single month.
Right.
And so if the rent is too damn high, the solution is for us to stop paying the rent. And the vehicle of that is a union, right? That's what unions do. They negotiate the leverage of workers. We negotiate the leverage of tenants. And it's only because of the people that negotiated the leverage of black workers, of slaves, that I exist here, that I can be here. And so for me, I'm just looking at the world and I'm seeing the setup. I'm seeing especially what it means for black and brown communities for the east side of Buffalo, that, you know, I've been saying for years, like, you know, gentrification is coming, and it's not a choice, right? It's a process. It's a thing that happens. It's happened in every other city in America for generations. And so for me, the only way to actually build power against a housing system that's designed to destroy us, designed to segregate us, is to participate in it differently and to negotiate how we participate in it differently. And, you know, that starts with a union. And I think that doesn't necessarily mean there's like one single way to do it, but it means that a group of people have to look at it, the situation, and say, if we're paying our rent every single month, if we're paying for our own oppression, like, how do we get around that? And how do we force negotiations with our landlords, with the city, who I think is a landlord of all the land that isn't already owned, to actually benefit us? Because right now they're exploiting us more and more and more, and I think more intentionally, in order to make people weak, to not resist other things that they're doing.
You know what? I love the fact that you're doing something about it. And you do have a lot of people, we'll get into that later, who have joined this movement and this union with you. I want to take a minute and just let our listeners know we want this episode to be a platform that you can also use to your direct benefit. So whether you're navigating through rent hurdles, organizing your block, or just trying to understand how national housing policy impacts Buffalo neighborhoods, this space is for you. I actually, sorry about all the stuttering, guys. I put out a post on social media to get some engagement before we sat down. And the question was, what is the biggest housing challenge you see in our community right now? And we got a little bit of feedback. There were a couple of people who kind of had the same thing. And our girl, Athena Cyrus, hopped on. I love Athena. She's a powerhouse as well in our community. Her voice is always, you know, out there. She's always speaking on important issues. She does not play. And, you know, she had a comment that said the issue that she sees is higher rents and a decrease in jobs. You know, it's not like the jobs are going up as well to help us support these rental increases. There was also, the higher the rent, it seems like the higher the eviction. People are being displaced. And you know, my thing personally, because I'm actually a resident of Fillmore District, so I know, I'm Buffalo born and raised. That was the poorest side of the city. Probably still is. The cheapest rent, you know, and a lot of people will say, hey, I don't care how broke I am, I'm not going to stay over there because it used to look crazy, you know. I mean, it's kind of looking crazier. What a lot of people don't know is that my family came from down south. back in like the, I want to say 50s and 60s. They moved up here and they landed on Fox Street. They were a part of block clubs. I've seen life over there in that Broadway Fillmore district, and it just kind of weathered away over the years. It's not a lot of stuff going on there, but you know what is happening? Gentrification. So this is an area where rents were consistently in the $4, maybe up to maybe $7 at the highest, $700
I remember
rent.
when it used to be $625 with everything included.
Listen, my last house.
Oh man,
yeah, about 2 years ago. Yeah, $625, great rent, great. You know, now these same houses that were worth $600 they're charging $900 a month for people, and you know what? Or more, and they still have the same conditions, the same old radiators that'll burn you if you touch it, walking too close to it. You know, horrible infrastructures that are falling apart. And I know that there's a side where, you know, maybe landlords, private owners, they may be facing increases in their tax. I would like to learn more about that because, you know, where does it correlate, you know, with the $300 jump in rent for a renter? You know, does it happen in the taxes? Is it somebody trying to make profit? And how do you get to jump the rent like that without making any improvements to this property? You know?
Sorry, I don't. The first thing that comes to mind is lack of accountability. Lack of accountability. If of course the landlords are going to continue increasing rent on these dilapidated houses because no one's holding them accountable in court. Housing court is a mess, you know, and even you know, sure Mayor Ryan has just started his administration. I know from conversations with some folks there and in the back of housing, like, you know, they're trying to improve the departments and holding violations accountable, increasing the fee for that and all that stuff. But
no, they're not. That's not what a city does. A city makes land more valuable. A city wants to make taxes like grow. And so, you know, gentrification it starts with divestment. Divestment is a strategy to attract investment. And so they don't want to improve things. They want things to be bad because that's how you get tax breaks. And like, you know, most of those tax breaks were invented by Donald Trump, like the blight-based tax breaks. They're how New York City got to be what it was. And Buffalo is just one of the last cities that this is why I'm always like kind of drives me crazy because it's like this has literally happened to every single city. You watch any 90s movie, you watch any 2000s movie, gentrification is a topic, and Buffalo is just one of the last cities that is experiencing this. And so I get really frustrated because like a city, like it's never been supposed to math out. Like there's never been an agreement or there was never any concept of like affordability like baked into the system at all. It's always been like get as much money as possible. And so it's just that there wasn't really a lot of demand in Buffalo.
So that's the thing, accountability. How do we you know, sure, we can hear from our elected representatives like, oh, I'm gonna increase this department, I'm going to change this judge, etc. But that's not enough, you know? And again, going back to the union, like that is where we hold the power, you know, the social capital and then turns into political capital and then we can see change. But a lot of people have too much faith in our representatives, you know? To play it nice right now, I really hope the best, but I prepare for the worst when it comes to who we're electing, you know? And I pay attention to who's, you know, biting their tongue. Like, we're way too connected with developers. We're way too in their pockets, you know, and we need to call that out more. And again, bring power back to the tenants in the form of money, social capital, information, et cetera. It's just, that's the biggest thing, you know, and no one, if you're not holding these, they're going to keep doing what they're doing.
I love what you said there. I don't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, I love what you said there because, you know, we do put a lot of our faith and things into our politicians and think that they're going to handle the issues on their own. But there is a need for us to participate in this, too. If we really want to be heard, we do need to start joining those organizations and unions that hold us in their interest. And you know what? As the conversation picks up, I also want to let our listeners know you can dial the radio show. You can dial 716-878-5104 if you have a question or comment on today's topic, especially as conversation's picking up right now, for sure. Just wanted to let you guys know. We welcome you to call in on the topic. But yeah, I think I agree. The accountability, and we're not innocent in this too. Like, I'm ready to join. I'm ready to hop in and make sure that our voice is heard too, because I'm not the only one, you know?
And it's accountability, you know, I also think it's accountability on what you just said, like on us too, but like our community. So like as a Latina, I am like, why are we not joining our East Side communities and trying to figure out how can we make this better for each other? Because I keep saying, I mean, it's not everywhere, and my experience could be different from other people. And be like, oh, well, we're working on it. That's great. Like I want to be involved, because like the people who are at the top and with a lot of power advocating or not advocating, like it's too segregated. And I'm like, why are we fighting against each other and being like, oh, well, the West Side is worst, the East Side is worst. I'm like, bro, what? Like, this is impacting all of us. I mean, if you look at the data, you can see which side is quote unquote worse. And I really think like you can, like, if we work on that specific community, then you will see your community flourish. You know, I remember being at a health equity conference a couple of years ago, and Dr. Taylor was there, I think, talking about, you know, segregation on the East Side. Taylor. Yeah, and he's doing great work, and their focus is on specific zip codes on the East Side. And there was a community leader, I guess you can call them there, spoke up, and I understood where they're coming from. They're like, well, what about the West Side? That we actually have this percentage of vacancies, and stating it was worse. I'm like, and in my head, I'm like, that's not the point here. That's not the point here. That's not what we're here for. And like, sure, maybe you have that one specific percentage worse, but like, how is focusing on that taking away from you? Like, how, or that, like, how can we not focus on the East Side and the West Side that you're mentioning collectively? Right. You know, it just doesn't make sense to me. And I'm so tired of the baiting against each other. I'm like, we need to do better. And one of the articles I recently wrote for the Buffalo Latino Village is how do we build community up in a segregated city, a city built on segregation. And touching on that topic of like, as Latinos, we're not touching enough on, we're racist we're prejudiced towards each other and other people, and we keep acting as if we're what's going on in other parts of the city, and also what's going on with ICE. If you're documented, it doesn't impact me. It doesn't impact me. It's not my problem. Right. Oh, I don't live on the East Side. Not my problem. It is your problem.
It is. It is.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we recognize that there are people who are interested in things being the way that they are.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that like this idea, like this government, these systems were set up to do what they're doing, and they're actually not very good at helping people. And so I think in Buffalo, there is I call it like, you know, New York is like the urban jungle. Buffalo is an urban tundra, and there's not a lot of resources. And so there is actually a material competition for resources. And then you see, you know, those resources used to gentrify, right? To build, you know, capital and build value. And so it's not just about like the resources, but the building that they come in, the investment that attracts. And then like, you know, they're in every community, there's access. There's an access scale. And so the people who have the most access have the most interest in kind of, you know, challenging, you know, some of our community narratives and replacing them with the white supremacist narratives of like bootstrapping of like, well, those people didn't do enough to, you know, earn this. And so I think like in Buffalo, every single community has this pyramid, that's connected to the top and that blames the bottom for, you know, the position that it's in because of capitalism, because we need unemployment. Unemployment is what drives the cost of labor down. Homelessness is what drives the cost of housing up. The fact that every single landlord in Buffalo can replace someone just like that, and every single employer can, you know, is what make Buffalo Buffalo. And so these divisions are highly rewarded for certain people. And I think that's part of the reason why we try to, you know, with the tenant union, show people their power and leverage, because actually poverty generates a lot of money here. And segregating and manufacturing, and even if you just look at the districts themselves, right, they all are a connection between a very, very poor neighborhood and very, very rich neighborhoods. Poor neighborhoods to get poverty-based funding, rich neighborhoods to get political donors. And so I think, like, for me, what's really important is that, like, this is a game. game, and most of us have acquiesced the playing of the game to somebody else, because we think that, one, the game doesn't impact us, and two, we've been convinced that like we don't know how to play. And the truth is, every one of us is being played in it all day, every day by someone. And, you know, part of our goal is to get people to play. And so much of like what happens in communities now is things are pre-negotiated, right? Like your lease, your job description, everything in your life is just kind of given to you. And, you know, it used to be, you know, back in the day in all, you know, communities, we used to negotiate. You know, people used to barter. People used to trade. People used to have much more of an approach of like, I'm going to get what I need and we're going to get what we need.
Wouldn't they also kick it, like riot against landlords, like prevent evictions?
Oh, yeah.
So they fight in the streets. They prevent their neighbor from being evicted, and like even get to the point of physical resistance against landlords who was trying to evict that neighbor. They would all rally around each other. We need to bring that back, honestly, in my opinion. I'm like, that would, I think, would make a huge difference in different ways.
Yeah, and it's also, but it's harder to do that now because you have the phones, you have the distraction. People also move more.
Yes.
And so our housing system really was designed in the 30s during a moment when, during the New Deal, they had to segregate black, brown, and white labor. And so I think our housing system is designed to segregate people. It's designed to create a racial wealth gap. It's designed to do all these things. And so I think the number one problem we actually have is making this assumption that any of this was actually ever set up to work for us and that we are entitled to have a good life just because that's what's happened in our lifetime. Because our lifetimes are the safest thing that has happened on this land in the past 400 years. And there's a bunch of people who want to bring it back to, you know, a level of brutality that I think that's the problem. It's like people actually will not look at and stare at what a horror movie this place was before 1950 and even in the process and what it still is, and actually accept the fact that like there is no actual solution within this system and that we're going to have to figure some stuff out. And if we don't, like there are serious consequences. And I think right now the goal is to keep us, you know, distracted from what we can do for ourselves and the practice of actually building and negotiating with each other, which is like what everybody wants to do. I talk to lots of people and everybody's like, man, I just want to go in the woods with my friends and hang out. Like I want to be away from like, or some version of like, I actually want to, you know, build with my people. And so I think that's the problem, is that we're convinced that like this system is normal and natural and permanent. It's the way that humans operate when it really isn't. And I think then that makes people feel weird or, you know, feel unable to create the world that they actually want to live in until you get in a group of people and you get in one of those meetings and you're like, oh, everybody else is as weird as me. Everybody else is dealing with the same things, you know. And I think when we do tenant organizing, you know, everyone internalizes, oh, I have bed bugs, I have rats, I have roaches. Not this landlord has not like cleaned out the innards of this building since it was built. Like it is not on you. In fact, the people in the BMHA that I meet are the cleanest people that I've ever met because they have to be. Because if they're not, the conditions of the building that they're in will take over their homes and will take over their lives. And so I think, like, for me, the number one problem we all always have is that we believe that we are separate, different, and unique in ways that keep us from actually building power together and keep us from seeing you know, how these systems have like disorganized us as humans and really made us like sad and like, and it's really kind of depressing. And so I think like that's the problem to solve is like, can we see that like this isn't going to work for us and build something different? And also see that we are the ones who are paying for it. Like Jeff Bezos is the most powerful man on earth because we love convenience. There's like lots of like deeper ways you can get into that, but like, you know, Elon Musk is powerful because we like to send money without going to the bank, and white people want to think that they can solve climate change by driving cool cars. Like it's a white male ego that like drives his power. And so all of these things that like seem insurmountable actually come from us and our behavior. And I'm really trying to push people to think about, even when it comes to our representatives, they don't necessarily represent us. They represent commerce. They represent money. They represent the assumption that the more money is being made in Buffalo, the better it is for people. And that's just not true. And so I think the real problem is that we have to start to see the labor, the work to make things better that we have, because everybody's all day, every day talking about how they want people to behave better, how they want men to behave, women to behave, kids to behave, how old people should behave. Like there's a critique of everybody. And most people, I think, really want the same thing, which is a decent life. And I think we can all get that together if we get clear clear on each other and like what we want, and stop worrying about, some of these larger, like bigger picture things, because at the end of the day, most people are worried about their home, their rent, what they're going to eat tomorrow, what their kids are going to eat the day after.
You know what? Listening to you guys, Stephanie and John, talk about the separatism and how we do need to come together, it actually takes me back to school. And we are at Buff State, but I read State Racism, State Violence, and Vulnerable Solidarity by Mejia Cherry. She wrote a really strong paper / short essay. It's not really a book, but she basically talked about how state racism kind of, instead of the state being against or protecting us from other states and things like that, or it's like state violence against us. It's like the people end up being the ones who are attacked, yes. Right? And so it's like our justice system fails us in some spaces, but the solution that she says is that we need radical democracy. That's what she says. And she also uses a term that I really love. People are going to get tired of me because I feel like it's the answer. Vulnerable solidarity, formed on a basis that we all as citizens are affected and can be targeted by the same state racism and violence. And like you said, everybody needs housing. It's not an east side, west side, north side type of situation. It's an everybody thing. And so when we acknowledge that we are all collectively vulnerable to these things, we need the solidarity to come together and fight against it. No matter what side of town you are, what your skin looks like, we all need these resources to live. And
I just want to go back to just really building off of that and going off of, again, the union organizing and making sure people are informed and using that information to unite more. So, I want people to understand, this city was built to kill us, If you are in a specific zip code, you're at a higher rate for a heart attack, for disease, etc. And it goes all the way back to the Federal Housing Association and their manual for grading the different areas of Buffalo. And I don't think... And for us, we know that. We're like, this is the basics. But, a lot of people don't. And what I've been doing since I've, been, just researching this more, just talking to anyone and everyone, did you know that we can't control this? This got a grade D, this got a grade A. And if you also look at the COVID rates are higher in this zip code compared to this zip code. Then if you look at the graduation rates, lower in this zip code, and this all goes back to what grade they got, because it was purposely done like that. You had grades A to D, and there's the 1937 HOLC grades. And if you look at 14208, it got a C. Back in the 1930s, and if you look at 1422, it got a B. And if you look at the same code rates, higher rates there compared to the 1422, which is the Elmwood Village area. And then it goes again. You can just keep going. And everyone's just going back to it's not impacting me. Yes, it is. Because now with this gerrymandering of maps, the funding, the political infrastructure there, everything is going to eventually trickle out into your area, whether you like it or not. The homelessness, etc., the quality, the lead in our soil, the quality of our water, the quality of our food, the quality of our infrastructure, because of the way we built this. So we're being inefficient. We're being the races back then in the 1930s, they thought they were doing a great job. This is going to be great for us. No, y'all screwed yourself now, 50 years, 100 years later. It's going to be real bad because everyone's going to be impacted. You think that you're going to keep getting better, which for some, for the very wealthy, they're going to be fine. But the middle class, the lower class, white folks who still try to distance themselves from BIPOC communities, no, you're with us. We're all in this together because we all got screwed by these lines, by these grades, and it's not going to change until we really go deep into it. That's true. I want to ask you, John, what is the call to action for our residents, our owners even, because it's not just for renters. What is the call to action for our people? What needs to happen in order for progress to be made, either with the union, outside of the union?
I think, well, one, I just want to say not only was it designed, but it wasn't a mistake, and the design continues to be reinforced. So Buffalo had the fourth highest concentration of subprime mortgages, right? So all those red lines, like they have been guides for how all this stuff has worked from day one, and so it's not a mistake. It's active. If you look at the city of Buffalo, every planning, zoning, and economic development decision that they've made have either reinforced those red lines or tried to flip them. And so all of gentrification starts with the redlining, and now they're trying to flip it. So they redlined Broadway Fillmore, and now that drove the value down, which then means that they can pay themselves to buy it back and to build the land up. And so first, anybody who's living in a building that is not satisfied with their landlord, our goal is to unionize those buildings just like a union would. So in a union, you have 100 workers. You want to get 65% of the workers are a supermajority. That's a lot of how politics works. If you look at the Senate, right, there's 100 votes. You win when you get 60. That's the supermajority in order to pass a bill. So American politics is based on controlling supermajorities, and so we try to build supermajority unions in buildings that basically are collectives of tenants who come together and say, the warranty of habitability is not being held. Our city is not actually enforcing its laws, and we're going to enforce them, and we're going to force negotiations with landlords to get what we deserve. I think most people don't really understand how bad the conditions are in Buffalo, but this city has the oldest housing stock, which means it is actually the most expensive place to maintain housing. And then you have the intentionality of the racism, the West Side, East Side, and the way in which those homes have not been taken care of for generations because they have not enforced the warranty of habitability at the court level or taken any of these slumlords to court. And so, what we're trying to do is to build a union of unions. That means we build unions within buildings, and then we have, neighborhood unions, basically any arrangement that helps people negotiate, because the city has a planning board, a zoning board, city plans for every area. And really for the BMHA, there should be a resident advisory board that is a board of every single representatives from every single building that can supersede the powers of the BMHA commissioners, because the BMHA is set up to be a board of 7 people, 5 appointed by the mayor and 2 residents, so that the 2 residents can never beat the mayor in the interest of the city. And the BMHA really sets the bar pretty low. They do the most evictions, about 4,000 evictions a year. So they have 10,000 people. They do 4,000 evictions a year.
Wow.
Right now, the waiting list for Section 8, which BMHA controls, is closed. When it was last open, the waiting list was 12 years long. They're supposed to be regulating all Section 8 apartments. Anybody who gets Section 8 knows that most people lie to get their Section 8 because there aren't enough apartments that actually meet the code. Every BMHA building is under code, has been under federal investigation for 15 years, and still people are going without heat every single winter. And this has been going on for year after year after year after year. So, when you talk about the inspiration, I think that this Buffalo has things that are happening in it that don't happen in third world countries. And it does that because of a political leadership that is dependent on developers. It's not just that they like them, it's that the city does not have an economy. The city has no major employers outside of government. And I don't think people understand how bad that is and how we all have to be responsible for building an economy, because they keep faking one. And we keep watching them fake it and watching the impacts of them fake it and create new projects and new ideas that kind of make up for the gap. But the reality is we don't have enough jobs here to sustain the amount of people here. And that means people are dying every single day because there aren't enough jobs. And that's not a solution that like you can actually, at this point with AI, at this point in human history where labor is at, there aren't things that really create more new jobs right now. And even the ones that do really replace those jobs. So you might have them for a period of time. And so one of the reasons I think Buffalo is important is we sit between 2 Great Lakes in an era where I think water and land near water are the most important things on earth. And so, for me, at some point we all are going to have to acknowledge and negotiate with, like, how bad this place is, how little of an economy we have, and the fact that our elected officials are stalling. And that's all they can do. Like, even if they were better people, even if they were all super geniuses, their position is not designed to actually solve like existential problems of economics. They're just not. And so I'm trying to get people to get really clear that, like, if you want to have a future, you have to build it yourself. And that starts with you negotiating against, you know, the rent, your bosses. You know, the number one crime in this country is wage theft. There's more wage theft than any other kind of theft. And so between wage theft and rent theft, we are getting robbed and we are getting milked for everything we have all day, every day, while they are stalling as climate change and all of these bigger problems are happening. And I think ultimately the point of a tenant union is to take care of your home first, and to have a group of people that can help you take care of home so that you can be more politically active other places. And so, you know, we're having tenant town halls, we're having tenant assemblies, we're going to different communities to really have these real conversations about beyond just the rent and the conditions and how bad they are, how brutally and ruthlessly bad they are, especially in Broadway Fillmore, especially you know, on the Lower West Side, especially in the areas that have the highest concentrations of people of color, and highest concentrations of parents, right? Because, you know, rent is about bedrooms, it's about size, it's about how much space you have. And the more you have babies, the more you need space. And sadly, in Buffalo, the more likely that is to be lead. That is to have mold, asbestos, and all these things that are literally, you know, talking about YNs or whatever. Like, these homes are killing our kids. They're literally making them developmentally disabled. And, but, you know, people want to talk about gun violence, and gun violence is incredibly important. And it's a product of the conditions that were put in that were designed to make things this way. And the only thing that's ever going to change them is us. And it's us using the leverage we have as workers, and the leverage we have as tenants, and the leverage we have as voters in blocks together, and the leverage we have through, you know, through finance and through being able to pool our resources. And so I'm just here to try to build the infrastructure to make sure that those things can happen, because I see what's coming. And I think everybody sees what's coming, but I think sometimes we have to, like, force people to kind of stare at it and build through it. Otherwise, you know, we'll continue to let these folks, you know, control our lives and control our futures. And every day that that happens, I get more concerned that, like, we're getting less of an opportunity to have a future.
Well, I mean, not with the efforts that you're putting out there. I know you got a meeting coming to my side of town soon at the King Urban Center, right?
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, and once again, I'll let our listeners know we're coming up on, like, the last few minutes of this take. If you have any comments or questions or concerns, 716-878-5104, 91.3 FM WBNY. Call us. Buffalo's original alternative since 1982, brought to you by Buffalo State University. Just got to let you know, have a conversation with us, guys. But I want to ask you, John, if somebody listening today wants to be down with the tenant union, how would they go about contacting you?
Yeah, they can reach out to John, John, at tenantfederation.org. My number is 716-704-8843 and 716-704-8843. Working on getting a website, social media, building all that stuff out. But for right now, that's how we're reaching people. And then we meet every other Saturday at 2824 Bailey Avenue. And then you'll find us at every BMHA meeting, which is every third Thursday of the month at 300 Perry Street. And then you can find us at the King Urban Life Center this Friday, June 12th at 6 o'clock for our Tenant Power Town Hall.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing that information. I mean, we can keep up with the conversation. So, I mean, I just want to focus on the call to action, because a lot of people could feel what the issue is, but then they'll get lost when it's like coming to specifics. And I know you mentioned voting, but, you know, if there's no polls going on now, what can that person do? Reach out to John, join the unit, you know, the Tenant Union Federation. Reach out to your local block club and share these things with them.
Talk to your neighbor.
Talk to your
neighbor. And like John, you mentioned, like, how can we help each other to help maintain our homes so we can also focus on creating more capital and gaining more power? Talk to your neighbor and exchange goods. And by that, I mean, hey, I got a mower. You don't got a mower? I'm going to help mow your lawn. If you have, snow plowing, shoveling your snow, like even just sharing, winter kits, like after the 22 blizzard, a bunch of us got together, Oshai Leaders of Colors, and we created winter kits, and we distributed it in specific areas that were hit hard. Be like, hey, if this happens again, this is a kit. This is like, we got a solar bank, we got a blanket, we got MREs, like foods, water, etc., in case the worst case scenario happens. But also, talk to your neighbor, get your number. God forbid another blizzard happens again, and you still have heat, but they don't. They can come over. Yeah.
And I think when it comes to voting, we have to vote in blocks, right? Like just like money, right? If I have $1, you have $1, we have $2. So I think like it's not just it's getting to know your neighbors and also getting to a point of like, hey, this is what's in the collective interest of our neighbors, And so I think actually being explicit about like, hey, like, are you paying more taxes than I? Like, how are you feeling about this? And so I think the sharing and all that stuff can help mitigate the harm. And then getting to the, like, are you feeling this too? Like, does the city fine you every time you don't cut your grass? Like, did you just have to pay $1,500 to get, just to get 2 garbage cans? Because I think what I also see in this moment is like everybody's like kind of talking on Facebook, but people aren't actually talking to each other. And that means that, we don't actually get a chance to build those voting blocks. And then I would say join a political party, right? In Buffalo, like it's all the Democrats, you have Working Families Party, but you don't really have a lot of parties that have lines. And so, it's not just to vote, but they'll be like saying like, well, you make baskets to win a basketball game. Well, there's a lot of different ways to do it and rules to it. And I think actually, taking the time to take that seriously, and I'm definitely happy to help anybody who wants to think about that. But I think, building voting blocks and like, really having events, have a barbecue, invite people out, build those relationships, but really don't be afraid to be political because I talk to people all day, every day, and everybody's afraid, but everybody has a political rant. I pull up on people and knock on their doors and people think, oh, they're not going to want to talk to you. No, people are dying to share what they think about the world and what they want people to know. And so I think that like really having those real conversations, and then really understanding the system that we're in and making no assumptions about it. Like we're coming up on some primaries right now, and it's actually very complicated to just vote and to contribute. And so I would just push people to like, if you really are mad at this system, if you're mad at the outcomes of it, actually take the time to really think about it and understand why and what you can do to be effective about it, because there's so many ways to be effective. And I think that's just like part of the problem is that it's easy to speak out about it, but it's harder actually to like find out the information that you need, and also to take the risk, right? It is a risk and it might not work. And I think that's something for people who are like, well, why would I get involved in politics if it's just all this stuff? And the reality is it is, and it's also can be fun, and you meet lots of great people, and you also can feel better about the world because you actually can see and understand, why things are the way that they are. So I really just think getting involved and getting engaged is really important at whatever level you can tolerate it.
Heavy on getting involved, and I love that you pointed out the fact that people actually are waiting for others to come out and ask them certain. I live, I told you guys I live in Broadway Fillmore area, Fillmore district. And one thing that I've heard my neighbors express is that, nobody comes by and knocks on our doors when there's these big elections going on in the city. Maybe they're scared to come to our side of town, but, there's still a population of homeowners and, there's a good population over there. The people are good. Just because it looks crazy doesn't mean that it's all bad, and so it makes me think, because I've worked on a political campaign before. We've knocked doors and they always send you to the same areas that have the highest voters, but then they forget about the rest of the city, and some of our neighbors do feel forgotten. Don't be afraid to come out and talk. Don't be afraid to go and knock those doors and really get the opinions of the people and the facts of the people who are living in those communities. So I love that you said that because, I'm sure that a lot of people want their voices to be heard, especially in that neighborhood. We are coming up on the last few minutes. I know that there were 2 events that were coming up that you wanted to speak on.
Yes. We have our Tenant Power Town Hall, which is this Friday at the King Urban Life Center at 6 p.m. We're inviting all tenants, and to me, whether you live in an apartment building or whether like me, I am a tenant of KeyBank, and I got about 24 more years until I actually own my home. We are all tenants of the city of Buffalo, and Sean Ryan is raising that rent and not giving much back for services. So when we say tenant, we mean anybody who has experience of leverage, over how you live and how you house yourself. So we're all going to be speaking out at the King Urban Life Center at 6 p.m. on Friday. And then the BMHA has canceled their last 3 meetings. I don't have no idea why. We just wanted to bring a lot more people to see what they're doing. But they actually just announced that they'll be doing their meeting this month on the 18th at noon. Great convenient time for working folks at the Martha Mitchell Center. So it's June 18th, noon at the Martha Mitchell Center at 175 Oakmont. If you want to help us continue to hold the BMHA accountable for freezing tenants over the course of this winter, and just the ridiculous lies. Anybody who's ever driven by a BMHA property knows that they are not doing their work orders in 24 hours. And anybody who's ever applied for the BMHA knows, what the real deal is there. So we're really grateful that they're finally going to have a meeting. And hopefully we can get some more information about how those tenants are going to have heat this winter and continue to hold them accountable, because I think they really set the bar for every other tenant in the city. And if they're allowed to treat their tenants that poorly, every other landlord will be able to too. So join us on June 18th at noon, 175 Oakmont, for the BMHA's next board meeting.
I love that. There was a saying that you had when we were speaking previously, and you said that you kind of just said it in so many words, but it was like along the lines of how the city treats its worst, or how it treats its best. You know what I'm getting at?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, how they treat the worst of us, or like now I'm blanking myself. Basically, like if we allow them to treat the worst of us this bad, they're going to do that to the best of us too. And so it's like really like that's what solidarity means.
Yes.
It's like even if I might be being treated a little bit better, I know that one day I will be that person that gets treated this way if I allow that to happen to other people. And so we cannot let the people in the Perrys and Kenfield, Langfield freeze every winter for years and years on end, and not expect that one day that's going to be us with one of our landlords.
Right. I hear you there. Thank you so much for that, John. I really love the take that you bring, especially to this topic, to anything that you speak on, because you're passionate, you're knowledgeable, you really bring it. I really appreciate you coming on the show today. Stephanie, did you have any last words before we end this show?
No, just thank you again. I've learned so much from you just from this 1 hour, and I think it's so important for us to just continue learning, even though a lot of us have been doing this work for a while or we're just brand new. Continue learning. It's fun. You connect. And as you said, people are dying to talk to you and just vent. It shows that we're also lacking that connection, and we need to talk to each other. Even it doesn't have to be a task. It just be a fun get together, chat, vent a little bit about how horrible slumlords and this and that, and then, enjoy a drink or two, enjoy a snack, something, cook something for each other, learn from each other. That's the best way to get to know each other.
All right. Well, I definitely agree. That solidarity, that's the important part. We got to get back to having conversations with each other. All right, you guys. I want to thank everybody who tuned in to listen to us here at WBNY 91.3 and FM. And we have been talking peace with the Western New York Peace Center. You all enjoy the rest of your afternoons and